And I'm super excited to tell you about what we're calling FedGPT. So you might start to guess what FedGPT is, but before I tell you about what it actually is, I want to motivate why we're interested in it and why we're actually developing this new capability of Flower. To motivate FedGPT, let's look at what's happening with language models right now. We think the future of LLMs is going to look something like this, whereby you have many generic LLMs, super powerful LLMs created by all sorts of AI companies. Obviously, OpenAI is a likely candidate for producing these LLMs, and ChatGPT has really transformed the way we think about AI in the matter of months. But what's interesting is that only a few months later, so ChatGPT comes out at the end of November, a few months later, Bloomberg, of all companies, comes out with a new model they call FedGPT in March. So rapidly, very rapid creation of what is also going to be an important class of LLMs. And what's different about Bloomberg LLM, or the FedGPT, is it is trained not on generic web-based data. It's trained on 40 years of financial data. And so if you want to contrast these two LLMs, the ones produced by OpenAI are incredibly powerful. They are trained on open web data. They're trained in all the publicly accessible data. And in a few small cases, they're sort of augmented, thus supplemented with a few partnerships to get access to some unusual, rare pieces of data. But they're largely trained on public data. And so on the other hand, these more selective, customized LLMs, ones made by Bloomberg and other folks, they're actually going to be trained on sensitive data held by a company or another organization in a very task-specific way. And so the big open question is if these smaller, more specific LLMs that are trained on highly sensitive data, how is this going to be possible? How are we going to do this moving forward? What are the technologies that are going to be needed to produce these smaller, more constrained data that's very specific for what they're trying to do? Because Bloomberg obviously is not inherently an AI company. They're not going to be pushing forward the architectures, not going to have the GPUs and so available. And so how are we going to do this? What's the ecosystem going to look like? It's also important to note that this is not going to be a one-off thing. You saw this slide from Daniel just this morning, and it's really the way we think the world of machine learning is going to evolve. All of the sort of breakthroughs in AI you can think of, including ChatGPT, were trained on public and centralized data. But when you compare that to the data that exists in places, organizations, companies, it's really dwarfed by the data that's really currently untapped. And it's not just big one monolithic blob that we could just get access to. It's actually comprised of thousands and potentially millions of different sources that can't be stitched together currently. So again, what are we going to do if we think the future of LLMs also includes an important slice that's trained on these smaller pieces of data that is currently inaccessible to the public web? Again, what are we going to do? And so we think the answer to what we're going to do is going to look something like this. Obviously, there'll be other ways to cook these LLMs, but we think an important way to bake these guys is going to be use a technology that we're going to be offering very soon called FedGPT. FedGPT enables federated learning to train LLMs. And initially, the way we're going to allow to do this is that you can have Flower nodes containing sensitive data, containing distributed data, containing private data. And so they might contain tabular data from a finance company, highly sort of sensitive data from a hospital. And you're going to have these available in Flower nodes, and they're going to talk to Flower servers where we're going to host LLM backbones. So there's a variety of LLM backbones already available. There are folks like Bloom and Hugging Face were the backbone of choice for Bloomberg. But there are there's a rapidly evolving set of backbones out there. There's Dolly, there's Alpaca. Mosaic has a really nice one called MPT 7B. So it's a nice small constrained backbone that you can use to sort of augment with your data. And what we're going to offer is really a breakthrough in federated learning, and the fact that you're going to be able to have your server components in the federation running the backbones and fine-tune them, specialize them on pieces of data that could otherwise not be accessible. I call it a breakthrough in federated learning because you can't currently do this type of thing. If you take into consideration the comms overhead, the fact that these backbones won't fit on most nodes, and so on, for us to pull this off, it's been a tremendous amount of work. And for that reason, initially what we're going to do is open it as a preview edition, whereby we can sort of start to onboard researchers, a few interested companies who want to use this technology, and we can start to perfect it over time. And so while we can do it right now in smaller scales in the lab, as we start, we want to basically roll it out incrementally. And so for that reason, it has to be a community effort. And so the announcement today is that FedGPT will become available during the summer, so in the matter of months, and that if you want to be involved, if you want to be one of the first people to use FedGPT, you should follow this URL that's available and live right now. There'll be a limited beta release. So please sign up if you want to be one of the first adopters of this new technology. And that is announcement number 1 for the Flower Summit this morning.